Well, the next night, Sandy and I are riding horses along this field of really beautiful green grass, and I happened to look down, and there was this tiny little horse that stood about 2 inches high. So I reached down and picked him up and put him in the palm of my hand, and then we rode up to the top of a ridge, and I this horse up in the palm of my hands, and you could see almost forever, just like a white thing in the distance, and all you could see was white and no obstructions. It was like you could see whiteness forever. And I held this horse up, and you could see all that just as I held them in the palm of my hand. And then I woke up from that dream.
I thought that the horse would get bigger, but again, it's a comparison. You see the difference. You see it's about awareness. Everything is awareness. So you see the difference with yourself, and it's giving you a comparison as opposed to, you pick them up off the ground. Well, that's like the earth, and you're riding above the earth. So I see that as a comparison, and then you go up to this place and you have this endless view. Well, again, it's awareness, isn't it? You have this view, and I see it as horses are on the earth for the most part, and that's what I see. It's your viewpoint. You have the bigger view compared to, you might say, like what's taking place on the earth.
I had one other dream that was kind of interesting, and there was this really old painting in my dream, and in my opinion, I was thinking, in my thinking, this old painting had been painted over with a new painting. You know how they do that a lot? They'll take an old painting, and then when somebody wants to update it, instead of starting out with a new canvas, they just paint over the old one. But in this dream, there was this old Vatican priest who thought I had taken the original painting and substituted the replacement painting. And then I woke up from that dream. Any idea what that might mean?
Well, these are fun. You're having fun. You guys are having fun. So, you know what the Vatican is, right?
Yes.
The most evil institution on the planet.
Yeah.
And so they are all reptilian, world controllers. And so I can see where he's not very happy, but, you had substituted the painting. In other words, well, they like the old stuff. They don't want anything new. So you had done a substitution of the painting?
Well, maybe. It's possible I did that. I don't remember replacing it. I was accused of taking the original and replacing it, and I just thought the old was just painted over. They took the old painting and redid it, did a new painting over the original.
Well, it's like the old ideas that, instead of starting with a new canvas, you just, people have seen the old painting. In other words, the old ideas of things, and what is the world, what do the governments do all the time, as an example. They kind of create new fronts, okay? Just like they're doing the chemtrails, and a lot of people know what it is, but what they do is that they create a front saying, oh, this is geoengineering, it's all good for us. They just paint over the old canvas, you might say. Something along those lines. And what you're confronting there, the Vatican, we know who they represent, the reptilians. That's just a representation in the physical sense. So you're confronting these things also, and basically they don't like what you're doing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
We're all doing that, yeah.
Well, I have a very interesting thought, and maybe you can
Clarify.
Clarify or give me some insight on this. Back around 1992, when I was teaching in the Chicago area, and I talked about this one other time, there was this guy who was an expert on brains. I mean, he was like the world leading authority on brains. and he came into our university, and all the students got out of all their classes, and we filled up this one huge auditorium where he was up there giving a speech about how the brain functions and all that. And it turns out this guy was one of the first guys to come out with those 3D papers with all the dots, where you look at all the dots, and the dots are just meaningless. But when you cross your eyes and refocus your vision and wait for your I don't know what part of your mind to kick in, and all of a sudden those dots turn into a 3D picture. Are you familiar with that?
Oh, sure, yes.
You know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah, you see them all the time where there's a circle, but certain dots are a little off color, and it says the number 3 or something in them. But sometimes as you don't first see it, but as you look a little closer, all of a sudden you see it. Yeah.
This guy made a very, very interesting statement, and I spent hours and hours and hours, night after night, for like 2 years trying to follow through with what he said. And he said, and this kind of, I mean, it knocked my socks off, but I was never able to see it. But he said that when the heavens were created and all the stars were put up in the sky, and all the mystics talked about the different signs of the zodiac and the different animals out there. You know, you have the swan and Orion the hunter and all these things out there. He said, he made the statement, he said, if you go out on a clear night and you look at these different constellations at night and cross your eyes, you find the 2 right stars to look at and cross your eyes, all of a sudden you'll see that constellation or whatever that figure was, just like a 3D picture you would hold in your hand. And I spent many, many nights, many hours looking at every constellation, trying every combination of stars I could to cross my eyes and wait for that image to appear, but it never happened once. So, do you have any insight into if that was really a fact, or maybe back, a couple of million years ago on the Earth that you could actually see those figures, or is this guy just? And he even said he had seen them himself. So I'm wondering what the validity of that statement of his was.
Well, I think this is fun what you're bringing up. Also, you mentioned the word Chicago again, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? And your experience was in Chicago. Again, that's where you're teaching, right? So that's kind of.
Well, it was a suburb, actually.
Yeah. Well, whatever. But and then you really decided to focus. That's cool. So. Everybody's got their take on things, and so he's making the statement when the heavens and whatever were created. So whatever, I don't explore everything myself, but that's kind of interesting. So the end result of that, okay, so it looks 3D, and we do these things in creation here. We deal with this phenomena that takes place. So again, we go through a lot of ideas. But the end result is, okay, so what does that equal, or, how does that substantiate anything that we're doing, etc.? So what was the idea of all this? Did he say what?
Well, this was 1992, but the reason I'm bringing this up, you have mentioned on several occasions that you have these galactic things going on that you haven't told us about. But I thought it would be, I mean, if you and the boys were capable of doing it, what if you were able to rearrange the stars in such a manner that you could let's say you looked at the Orion's Belt and looked at the 3 stars in Orion's Belt and crossed your eyes to where the 2 outer stars met with the middle one. If you did that, then all of a sudden you would see the new you open up into a 3D letters across the night sky. You know, I thought something like that would be so mind-boggling and so much proof for anybody that would even undertake the effort to do something like that. It would be mind-blowing for people, and it would add a lot of credibility to the new UU if somebody could see it in the night sky like that.
Okay, well, that's why you're here, Bob. So you've taken the first step, haven't you? Yeah, well, again, these are interesting ideas, you know, just like when I'm presenting, it's all very interesting, Dwayne. And so, you know, this is what I'm told. And, you know, again, each person is going to apply things accordingly, but if your quest is to rearrange the stars in the sky, well, that's a big project. Yeah, that's a big one.
I want to be here for it.
And after you rearranged it, just kind of imagine past the idea here. So, okay, so you've rearranged the stars in the sky exactly like you want it, okay? And so then you stand back and you look at it and go, okay, now what do I do? Okay, so now what? Once the stars are rearranged accordingly, so what's the end result of that? Do you know?
Well, probably what would happen is the guys doing the chemtrails would put out about 100 times more airplanes to block the night sky. Is probably what would happen.
No.
Well, anything can happen, yes. So again, you know, the fun part is to see what does happen from what we do, and we can predict and decide. And this is what the world controllers do. They continually decide what is going to take place. The whole of life doesn't do that because it's an isness. This is the best part of it. That's where your real freedom is. It's all here and now, but you know, people think in their minds through what they decide in a way is that they have freedom because they can decide anything, but it's more than evident from what they've decided, they've trapped themselves into an unconsciousness. So it's all interesting, isn't it? We're all in life. Can you say this is it or that's it? No, you can get close to what it is. Then you've got to recognize it with your real awareness. So these things that we're experiencing in creation are particular, but realistically, yes, we're experiencing the phenomena of the phenomena that has taken place here and trying to make it into something. But it doesn't matter how it is or how it's arranged or what. It doesn't matter. You know, it's like yesterday, you know, Charles many times brings up the difference between the United States and Africa. It doesn't matter. This is just the appearance of things, because the isness of life, that's the bigger picture. That takes care of everything, just like your horse experience. You see, and you kids were riding horses, so you were above things. You know, that was, you might say, that was your vehicle. And on Earth, it's the little horse, but because, you know, you were on the bigger horses, you had the bigger view. So in other words, that's like your vehicle. It's a natural vehicle that you're using to see the bigger view. You've chosen that. So what happens in creation is whatever it is, we deal with it. I deal with it. That's not really the idea, but to, you know, figure out something to how to relate to people. So, you know, just like you kids are going on your adventure to do what you're going to do. You've decided something. It's deciding something, and most people won't. They will just stay as they are. And so, you know, it's like anything. It's like leaving a piece of bread on the counter. You're not going to do anything with it. You're not going to wrap it in plastic. You're not going to put it in the refrigerator to save it. No, you just leave it on the counter. So what happens? It gets moldy, doesn't it, real fast? The flies come, etc. It decomposes. So this is like people that do nothing in their life. They don't go for the bigger adventure. They decompose. So, but you kids are doing it. You're moving forward. You're helping others become more aware, etc. So, you know, again, everything that you're doing entails that. So this is along those lines too. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's all I have to add at this time. Sandy probably has something else.
Not really. I just remembered a dream I had, and it was with Claudia. This was the other night too. another series of dreams. But we were getting into a car, and she was in the driver's seat, and I was in the back, and I had a bag. We were going to the seminar, and I had a bag full of disguises that I was going to use, and I had a wig that I was putting on in the car. That's kind of what it was. I just remembered it.
Do you know who Viktor Schauberger is or was? He was the engineer who designed the propulsion system for a lot of the first Nazi UFOs, and he developed the propulsion system for their underwater submarines. I mean, they're big tanker-sized submarines, and I don't know, around 1994, I found out he wrote a book, and I wanted to learn about that technology, and 3 publishing companies had to sign off on me buying this book, which I no longer have because I loaned it to somebody up in Eagle River someplace, and he confiscated my book. I haven't seen him or the book since. But in reading the book, it turns out that Viktor Schauberger grew up, and he was one of the main managers of the Black Forest of Germany. And this book is full of how he was able to maintain the Black Forest at a very healthy level. And he had all these tricks of the trade and all the knowledge that he learned, and the rivers and the way the trees drank water out of the groundwater and how they handled the rainfall and all that. It was just absolutely fascinating. So anybody that's interested in forestry, if they could find any books that he wrote, you would get a wealth of information on how to plant trees and how to maintain them and make them real healthy in almost any kind of environment. So I throw that out to you. It was absolutely interesting.
How do you spell his name, Bob?
Viktor, Victor, and Schauberger, Schauberger.
Rather
Yeah,
than Bauer?
Yeah, Schauberger.
Schauberger.
And just the guy was a real genius. And he said one of the worst things that Germany ever did and around the world, he said, the way you can destroy the local environment, the fastest way to destroy an environment is to build dams along these main rivers. Like over there, he fought tooth and nail to keep the Germans from building dams on the Danube River.
Oh, yeah.